Hello, everyone. I want to go ahead and welcome everyone today to our Lunch and Learn. This Lunch and Learn is being brought to you by a collaboration between Oklahoma Human Services, University of Oklahoma, and Henry Zarrow School of Social Work, and the Oklahoma Adoption Competency Network. We appreciate everyone joining during your lunch or noon hour. We want to go ahead and get started so we can make sure to respect everyone's time and the great information being discussed today. First, let us go over a few housekeeping rules for our time together this afternoon. We are recording this meeting. By participating, you are given your consent to be recorded. Help us go ahead and reduce the distractions so that we can all focus and participate. We have muted everyone to make it possible for everyone to hear the speakers. We want you to express your thoughts and questions though, so please utilize the chat for this purpose. We will monitor the chat and questions will be touched upon during our Q&A during the last 15 minutes of the webinar. We want to see you, so if you're willing and you can, please go ahead and turn on your video. If you're unable, that's fine also. To receive information about other post-adoption events, please list your name and email in the chat, and we will make sure to add you to our contact list. Go ahead and remember confidentiality. It is vital that we protect confidential information, so we will not use or share specific names, details, etc. about adoption cases, people, or children. CEUs are now available to professionals for this training. Foster parents attending this training will also receive 1 hour of training credit towards the 12 hours of in-service training that you need each year. Please go ahead and indicate in the chat if you would like to claim this CEU by posting your name and email. We will send you a certificate of attendance and participation. Now I'm going to go ahead and hand everything off to Liberty, who is our host today.
Thank you, Caitlin. Hi, I'm excited to talk to you guys. I wanted to let you know first and foremost who I am. So let me go back on my screen a little bit here. I am, let's see if it'll start my slide here. So I'm Liberty Daniels, and I'm a program field rep for Child Welfare Education Department. We've created an education advocacy department for our kiddos, the kids that before they come into custody, trying to prevent that from happening, kiddos that are in custody, and then hoping to help post-adoptive families as well. So that's why post-adoptions had reached out to me. One thing that I do is I go into the school systems and I sit at IEP meetings and I help advocate for our students to make sure that their educational rights are being met, being followed. And so here's my caveat to that. I'm not an attorney. I am a child welfare worker who has 17 years experience in permanency planning, and then almost 5 years experience in education advocacy. And I have participated in several trainings. My first experience was with child welfare as a permanency planning worker. We developed a group home for children who are developmentally delayed as well as mental health issues. And we were trying to figure out how to get them reintegrated, transitioned back into the school system. When we have aggressive kids, that tends to be scary, safety concerns for the school. And so they are timid about wanting to put them into their general ed classrooms and facilitate that. So I was able to be a part of the team and work closely with the special education department and work on creating plans, creating classrooms, creating goals, trying to figure out how we could get these kids into the general ed classroom, get them into the public school setting. So that's what I want to talk about today, is what I've learned from my experiences. And try to help with some of that special education advocacy that I'm doing on a daily basis. So the first thing I saw was this quote: "Learning is not attained by chance. It must be sought for with ardor." That's a new word for me. "And attended to with diligence." The word ardor, though, I looked it up, and it says meaning great warmth of feeling, fervor, passion, eagerness, or enthusiasm. And I thought, when we're advocating for our kids, it's a long road. We're going to really need to be attending with diligence, and we're going to need eagerness and that fervor, that enthusiasm to really continue to advocate, because it can be really frustrating. But I thought this was a really good quote. And when we talk about when it's a long road of collaboration. So I want to talk about collaboration first and foremost before we kind of get into some minute details of the law. And what is collaboration? I mean, it helps us to problem solve. It brings those professionals together. It helps each of us learn from one another. It opens up new channels of communication, and those channels of communication are very important when we're on an IEP team meeting and we're trying to problem solve and really figure out how to help our kids have positive outcomes and be successful in the school environment. It boosts morale among the team members. It leads to higher retention rates, and it makes us more efficient as a team in order to collaborate. 5 positive outcomes is my next thing. And it helps teachers brainstorm creative ideas. It provides an avenue for professional growth. It leads to improvement, improved student outcomes, which is what we want. I mean, that is the push this year, especially in special education, that we're not only going to look at with the State Department of Ed on making sure schools are compliant, but that we are having successful outcomes, that our outcomes are improving for our students. It aids in the success of school and district initiatives. Every time we advocate and we're part of a team, it's a stepping stone. It helps that school to learn and improve and figure out what they need to maybe work on, or what new initiatives or what new classroom they might need to develop, what new program they might need to bring into their school to help the new population of kids. When we talk about COVID and the trauma that it has caused our kids, we really have a dysregulation problem with those 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. And we're really linking it back to that trauma of COVID. And so these school districts are having to look at new programs of what they can do in order to support these kids, figure out what they need. And it's not necessarily that they have a disability. If they've got that trauma, we need to weed out the trauma from the disability. We'll talk about that a little more as far as the disability requirements for IDEA. But what I wanted to say here is that, teachers really need our help, our collaboration, our support, our ideas. What works at home, could hopefully help them at school. So it's all about that information sharing, that open communication. Right now, teacher retention is really on the all-time low. I mean, we are trying to, Oklahoma State Department of Ed are giving, sign-on bonuses to those teachers that are willing to teach pre-K to 3rd grade, or those teachers that are willing to come back and teach special education. The statistic is that teachers that work with students who are on the autism spectrum may only remain on their job for 2 years, because it's hard. It's very diligent work. It's very, it's hard. So we want to really make sure that we are supporting our teachers, supporting our schools, making sure that we're at these IEP meetings saying that we're there to support them. We're bringing in outside professionals that are already working with our kids, are already supporting our families to those meetings, their ideas to the meetings. We're taking those treatment plans that outside providers already have, and we're providing that to the school so that they can have ideas of what works, what doesn't work. Here's some do's and don'ts that I came up with. But the importance is help them and support them. Okay, that's what I really want you guys to take away from that collaboration piece. Some do's and don'ts. I have families that you really want to build rapport with your school. Bring cookies, bring snacks, bring drinks. We're really there to sit down and talk about the long haul of what your kids need. And we want to collaborate with the school. And we don't want it to be meetings that are like, oh, well, we set this for 30 minutes and we're getting bing banging out and we're going to move on. We need to, as advocates and as parents, really ask those good questions, really hold those schools accountable about, we're really going to sit down and diligently talk about this and brainstorm and really work on what this child needs. And if that means setting up another meeting, making sure that we talk to the school and get another meeting set up before we ever leave the room, so that we can really make sure that we're doing diligent work in order to help support these kids. So invite your support systems, invite the outside professionals working with your student, ask lots of questions. I mean, I ask questions until I know what's going on. I want to get the full gamut of it. We go into a meeting where they're talking about evaluations, and that evaluator wants to run through their evaluations, wants to run through those results because they're busy and they've got things to do. And I really stop them and slow them down and say, okay, I want to know about this test result. I want to know what's normal, what's not normal. Like, let's really like go through it and really understand why they came to the conclusion that they came to, why the result was what the result was. So making sure that we, are asking lots of questions. Provide likes and dislikes about your student. I mean, the school needs to know, what's happening. Our kids are always evolving and always changing. So what happens at home, what they like, what they dislike, those are important pieces of information to be providing to the school. Provide information about, what works, what doesn't work. Make sure the school has all the legal participants that they're supposed to have at the table. So, they're supposed to have that general ed teacher. They're supposed to have that special education teacher. Most importantly, they're supposed to have that school administrator. And sometimes they bring in a school administrator, and that school administrator is like, well, I'm here, I'm stepping in for so-and-so, or I'm the assistant principal, but I'm not the principal. So I really can't make that decision. I really can't decide now. We need somebody who comes to the table, who can make decisions immediately, who can really help us to say, yes, we can do that, or no, we can't do that. So I think that's very important. The one thing I want to say that I really came up with was only like, do not bring an attorney or threaten with attorney. What I'm going to continue to say is collaboration, being kind, working together, respecting one another. You get more, what's the term? Like, you get more, with sugar than
honey.
vinegar. Yeah. There we go, Malia.
Exactly.
Thank you. Help me out with that. And that is so true. Once we say we're going to bring an attorney, or I'm going to get my attorney, or whatever, then they're going to go, okay, well, we're going to reset this meeting and we're going to bring our attorney, right? And so now we've held up the process, and now we're kind of at, a standstill, or we're going to start battling with each other, and we're going to start putting those walls and barriers up, and we don't want to do that. There's lots of ways that we can address the school and work together and be collaborative. And then I'm also going to tell you ways, though, that we can involve CERC, facilitation, mediation. I mean, there are other avenues and other steps to take if we need to do that. But I just want you to be really cautious of that, of really going at them with kind of that, with that attorney threat. And then legally, I want to tell you that when I go to, the rights law trainings, they give a lot of good information. But one of the things they say is you can legally record the meetings. Now, I will tell you, you can legally record the meetings. However, once again, they're going to say, okay, we're going to postpone this meeting and we're going to get our attorney. Okay, so, I mean, what I would advise is taking notes, making sure we bring supports. It's kind of like when you go to, it's exactly like this, okay? We're dealing with our own trauma, right? Of trying to make sure our child is successful. And so we're already kind of coming in with that barrier, and we're kind of fogged in the mind on that. Like when someone's diagnosed with cancer, right? That's frightening. That's a trauma. That's something that happens to us. And so we need a support system to go to the doctor with us to really hear what we don't hear, And so I would always encourage anyone to bring their support system, bring those outside providers, so that they can take notes and they can hear. The other part of that is, after every meeting, they are supposed to write a written notice to the parent, to the team, lining out what the team discussed, what they agreed upon, what the next steps are. So, and they need to provide that to you for you to review that. I think I jumped backwards, sorry. So if they're not doing that, make sure they're providing you with a written notice so they can, outline what you guys talked about. So then you can go back and say, oh no, what about this, or add this, or make sure that's in there. We are all a team, and the team is one that makes the decisions, not an individual person. We talked about, that provider who's going to come in, or that school psych who's going to come in and talk about the evaluations. Does your student qualify or not? And that is they are going to recommend and make recommendations of whether that student and tell you what their test results say. And then they're going to recommend a category of disability, but they are not the ones that decide whether the student qualifies or what that category is going to be. Okay. The team makes all the decisions, and you as a parent are a big weight on that team. So, the other thing I want to say too is if we have a difficult, and we're going to get there. I think I'm probably going to repeat myself a lot, but with these slides, but I want to make sure that you guys get them. The other part is parents get discouraged because it's like, I don't agree with this. This is doesn't sound right. I don't want to sign it because I don't agree with it. Don't hold up I want to tell, this is my advice. Don't hold up the process by not signing the document. Sign the document and then also check the box that says, I disagree. I disagree with what the outcome of this meeting was, and then I'm going to write in my concerns. And you can handwrite that on the paper that they have you sign. They can ask you to type something up and send it to them. They might want to type something up. And the one thing I caution you about that is they tend to paraphrase. And so you might want them to read it back to you, specifically what they typed up that you said and what your concerns are, to make sure that your words are being heard. Okay. And that those are documented. Because once a team decides, then it's very hard. If a parent agrees, then it's very hard to go back on that and to do like a mediation or a facilitation or do a dispute when you as a parent have agreed with the process, because it's a team decision and they want you to agree and be on board. They should want you to agree and be on board. That is the law. So IDEA and Section 504, I just wanted to look at these really quick just to let you know that the difference between the two. They're governed under two different laws. And then I have this lady who is fabulous about talking about that. And I think this is pretty short. So let me know if you can't hear it. Can't hear it.
No, we can't hear it, Liberty.
Loud enough.
Okay. Okay. That's the other thing I should have checked. Sorry. I thought I checked it, but on my side, I was by myself checking it through this. So let's go back. So IDEA is an education, is governed under an education law, okay? 504, Section 504 is governed under a civil rights law. So in telling you that, the civil rights law is to protect people with disabilities. So we have like ramps and accommodations, smaller drinking fountains. So in the educational setting, it would be like a bigger pencil, a calculator. We're going to a classroom to for a quiet space or whatever. A 504 can be written right away by a counselor, okay? IDEA is the IEPs, okay? And that is governed under the education law, and you have to have one of 13 categories in order to qualify. You also have to, one of those 13 so we're going to look at that. Oh, those 13 categories also have to show that they that disability is affecting their education in a negative way. Does that make sense? So it's not just that they have this disability. They could have this disability and it be negatively affecting their home environment. But if it's not negatively affecting their educational environment, then they're not going to qualify. If that makes sense. But what I want to show here on the purpose of IDEA is that we want to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them free and appropriate public education. And that free and appropriate public education we're going to talk about is FAPE. Okay, we're going to talk about that a little bit more when we're talking about kids being removed from the classroom and when they're being educated outside of their that public school setting, because we want to make sure that free and appropriate public education means that they have to be appropriately educated based off what their needs are on their IEP. So if it's not meeting their needs, for instance, you have a child who has, reading disability or has a low IQ, and they want to send them home virtually, and the student doesn't know how to utilize that virtual program. They need handwritten assignments. They need somebody to read something to them. That's not going to be appropriate to send that child home virtually. We need other supports. Okay, so we'll talk about that a little bit more. The other thing I wanted to mention here is that this is not only for their education, it's also to further their education throughout their life and their employment and their independent living skills. Okay, so yes, we want them to get a diploma or to graduate, but IDEA says the purpose of IDEA and the plan is for them to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. So if you have a student that is 14 or in 9th grade, whichever comes first, we need to make sure they've got a good transitional living program, that they've got an ICAP, a good transitional plan that's really geared towards them and their needs, their developmental level of how we're going to work, the school's going to work with them appropriately to make them, to prepare them for further education, employment, or independent living. Okay, so that's just something I wanted to touch on. This is child find, and child find under the law says that we need to identify, okay, on here, locate, identify, and evaluate students suspected of having a disability. So I want you to note, it's not students that already have been diagnosed with a disability, have already had that psychological evaluation, but somebody who is suspected of a disability. If there's a perceived disability, we need to identify and evaluate that student so that they can be properly assessed and ruled out. If the school is aware that there is a perceived or suspected disability, that student qualifies under IDEA, under the IEP law, until ruled out. So if they haven't started the process, but they're aware that there's these perceived disabilities or these disabilities and concerns, and they haven't ruled them out yet, that child still qualifies under that umbrella of IDEA and under that protection, such as regarding disciplinary measures, informal removals, and those things. So that's a big part there. Sooner Start is who takes care of IDEA for children 0 to 2. Okay, once they turn 3, children 3 to 21 are the responsibility of the local school district. So the local school district needs to be assessing those students, and regardless of enrollment. So they can provide speech, OT, PT, all those services if that student needs it, even if they're not enrolled in school yet. Okay. Do you have any questions so far? I guess we're supposed to wait at the end, aren't we?
Yes, but someone does have a question to know what ICAP exactly is. So maybe.
Okay, so and I guess I should have looked up the actual wording of it, but an ICAP is a plan that all high school students have in order to graduate. So what is their career going to be? What are they interested in? What are their steps for their future? And so an ICAP is for all students, not just students on IEPs and 504s, but what I would encourage for students on IEPs and 504s is that we're having a meeting to really sit down as a group to really lay that out and discuss that and really have some very specific plans. If they're on an IEP or 504, typically their junior year, the schools will start that application for the VOC rehab program in order to look at helping them to kind of explore some careers and things that they might be interested in. And then also I want to say, we really want the students to be in charge, to learn how to advocate for themselves, to be in charge of their own plans and their own meetings. And I've experienced that too, where teenagers will come in with their own PowerPoint to their own meeting and say, this is what I want, this is what I need, and have the school and the team help them to accomplish that. Did that help a little bit? Oh, there we go. Individual career academic plan. Thank you so much, Sarah. See, I'm not the expert on everything. On all those, there's a lot of acronyms you'll know with special education. Okay, so here is the 13 qualifying categories under IDEA. If you look at these categories and you're an adoptive parent or you've had a child that was in foster care who has trauma, this emotional disturbance category, anxiety, depression, PTSD, It's a pretty common category that, you're going to look at and go, okay, well, if we have a suspected, diagnosis of this, or we already have diagnosis of this because they're on medications for those things, then we need to make sure the school is evaluating and receiving that information. Does the school have a list of all your students' medications? Because they should. They need to be in the know about your student and what's happening with them, so that they can make sure that they're creating the right plans with you in order to address those needs. These categories are disabilities, but these categories will help us identify some needs, but not all needs are the same, right? And we want to make sure that we are addressing needs, because identifying the needs, because needs is what drives services on an IEP in your plan, okay? Developmental delay is a category that is used a lot for children 0 to 10. They can use that. I always kind of push the envelope on that, because it usually comes with, they don't usually do a full scale IQ with that category. There's a lot of testing that's lacking when they're utilizing that category. So I kind of tend to push the envelope a little bit and see what we can do. But some schools are developmental delay schools, non-category schools, and other schools are specific category schools. So that's just a little tidbit. We want to make sure, even though the category is established, that we still have all the child's diagnosis written on the IEP. Because they're going to pick the most appropriate category, but they also have other diagnosis that we want to make sure the team is aware of and addressing their needs. And that comes into play when kids are being removed from the classroom as well. I was trying to think if there's something else on here I wanted to talk about. Disability categories on that very first page of the IEP. That big paragraph at the bottom should tell everything about your kid, so that school knows about your kid and what services he needs and those disabilities. Remember, the disability must adversely affect their education in order for that student to qualify. Okay. So those disabilities alone don't qualify them, okay? It's got to adversely affect their education. So when we talk about the first process, we need to make sure, and I put this in here because I'm sure a lot of your students are probably already on IEPs, but I still want to reiterate the fact that anything we do with the school must be in writing. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen, okay? So if we have a dispute or something comes up and we didn't put it in writing and we talk to somebody, they can always say they never heard that, that didn't happen. We always need to put everything in writing. One thing that I did provide, so this is, I've got a kid with a suspected diagnosis, a perceived diagnosis, they're on medications for something. I want to reach out to the school, let them know that. I put it in writing. Here's my concerns. They've got 10 days to respond. If they say no, you can appeal that. We could talk about that a little bit. If they say yes, then they've got and here's kind of the part where they say yes, right, in that 10 days, but then that is not when the 45 days starts. I just want to say that. So the 45 days starts when the parent signs the release for the evaluations. So here's one little thing I want to touch on. If a school psychologist says, I'm sorry, there's a waiting list, we haven't gotten to you yet, immediately let the special education director know that concern, because that is not a thing. There is no waiting list. Now, they probably have their own list of kids that they're evaluating, and you can only have so much time in the day and you're trying to get through this list of people. But the law says they need to meet with the parent, go over the evaluations that they're going to do, the proposed assessments, okay? The parent signs the release and that 45 days begins, 45 school days. The law says 60 days. Oklahoma has said we'll do it in 45, okay? So from there, then after the 45 days are up, we meet to have a meeting to discuss the criteria, to discuss if the child meets criteria for that IEP. If they don't meet criteria, then we can appeal that anytime the school says no. Here's a document that I provided to you. The top of it says IEP roadmap, how to seek out special education services for your child. I provided it to Sarah, and I believe she's going to provide it to you guys after this, along with my PowerPoint and special education policy and procedures handbook that is written especially for parents in Oklahoma. Okay. And we're going to go over that a little bit too. But this roadmap, it looks kind of crazy and long when you see it, but if you zoom in on it, it tells you, I've asked the school, if you look at here, I've asked the school to do an evaluation. The school said, no, I have all these other options to consider, right? I need to gather more information. I need to get more facts. I need to really, work at that longer. And it tells you what those options are. And if the school says yes, okay, then we're going to go down to the next step of, did they qualify or not? And this is where I talked about, whoever completed the testing with the child will have to be the one who goes over those evaluations with you. If it's OT, the OT specialist has to go over it. If it's PT, the PT specialist has to go over it. Whoever did the actual testing is the one that has to go over those evaluations with you and those results. And make sure you slow them down and understand what each test result means. I think I might get to this a little bit further, but here's another caveat. I want you to know that testing is done on a bell curve. And what that means is that if you think 70 is a C, right, in education, on a bell curve, 70 is not a C. Okay, 90 to 110 is a C, is the normal range, right? So anything below 90 in the 80s category is going to be borderline. 70s, I mean, all that is then, if you're going below that, those are extremely concerning. Okay, so I just want you to be aware of that. 90 to 110 is typically the normal range for the test that the schools are that the schools are giving to these students. If it says no, that they're saying no, they didn't qualify for services, it didn't adversely affect their education, then you need to be collecting, information from the school. Look at their report cards. Are they failing their classes? How are they doing? Are we making sure that regardless of whether they qualified or not, are their educational outcomes progressing? Are they doing well? You can also reach out and seek dispute resolution, mediation, facilitation with CERC, and I'll talk about that a little bit more too. So when we talk about least restrictive placement, we always want to work our way up, work our way down, right, on this scale, because the blue is general education, and we want all of our kids to not be discriminated against, but to be in that general education classroom with their peers. They do better with their peers, peer modeling, seeing what's right, what's wrong, what the rules are, what the expectations are, and that's the right that a child has, is to be in their general education classroom. Whether that means, with supports or not with supports, but we want to get them to where they don't need any supports, right? Where we have a problem is when we start moving up that scale and we start putting them outside of school or shortening their day, or now they've got a full-time para. What I want to say to you is if a student is not in school all day, or has a one-on-one para, those are the most restrictive environments that you can have. So I know a lot of parents are like, well, if my child had a one-on-one para, that I just don't understand the school won't give them that one-on-one para. You have to understand, I know some schools will say, well, we don't have people, or they may think it's a money issue or things like that. They also have strict standards by the State Department of Ed of qualifying for that para. So they have to qualify, okay? They also, it's not fair to our students to have somebody follow them around all day. That's not least restrictive. That's the most restrictive you can have in the school setting. Okay, so we need to be really cognizant of that and making sure that we're really looking at other avenues and other things we can do in order to support our student and meet those needs. Okay. The other thing is, if we did ask for a one-on-one para, the school does have to show active efforts on obtaining that para if they qualify, putting an ad in the newspaper, those kind of things. And we're also going to get to, a little later, but I guess I could address this now. You know, if they are saying they don't have one, then we need to really talk to them about what they do have. If this is the need that they have, and this is the service that is going to help them, but they don't have it, then what other services are going to help meet that need? What other things can we look at doing in order to support? If we have a student that is not in school all day or is not in their least restrictive environment, okay, I'm talking, I want to make sure, so it's really these shortened day kids and these kids that or maybe not in school, and we need to work to transition them back into school. I would say, as an advocate, I would not let that go longer than a month. Even if the school says to me, well, we need to observe them in this plan for 4 to 6 weeks. You can observe them in that plan for 4 to 6 weeks, but we can still have a meeting to discuss how that plan is going, if that plan is working, what we think about adjusting that plan, and if we need to. I wouldn't go longer than a month. I push schools to meet back in a week, meet back in 2 weeks, but don't let them go longer than a month, okay? Because things can go by the wayside, and we need to really stay on top of and be diligent. Remember that diligent work with the school and helping to support them in order to get our child back into school, back to full day, mainstreaming, moving to that general education setting. Are we doing an FBA? Are we doing a BIP? And we'll talk about that, I think, a little bit more here. Okay. So now we're going to talk about discipline. According to the law, children on IEPs or 504s can be disciplined up to 10 days, the entire school year, but up to 10 days as their normal peers are disciplined if they are violating the conduct disorder of the policies and procedures of that school district, okay? So, I'm sorry. So if the student here's the other thing too. I have a lot of schools say, well, they were not suspended or they're not expelled, so we just ask them to go home. Or the parent, what they try to do. Their parent has decided that that child was having a rough day and needed to come pick them up. It was the parent's decision to pick them up. I'm telling you right now, if the school calls you and there is a behavioral problem with your child, and there is a reason you need to come pick them up, and they want, to have this discussion with coming to pick up your child, ask them, are you asking me to come pick up my child? If they're saying yes, they need to write down why they are asking you to come pick up your child so that you have documentation of that, okay? They can do that for up to 10 days. After 10 days, so you want to keep track of how many days they've sent your child home, because once you hit 10 days, then they have to have a manifestation meeting, okay? And the manifestation meeting has to take place within 10 days of the 10 days, but where they are going to discuss the incident that occurred. Was it a result of the student's disability? If it had to do with this, if it was a manifestation of the child's disability, then the child needs to return back to school. Okay, same day, same environment. We're going to work on, a functional behavioral assessment, which is collecting data on that child to find out the antecedent to the behavior. We're going to work on a behavioral intervention plan. We're going to exhaust all measures, all resources before we talk about, changing placements or environment for that student, right? They also, if the student is sent home or is not at school, we need to talk about FAPE. We need to make sure that if they're being sent home, what are we doing to educate? Because they still have to have appropriate education. The only thing that supersedes that manifestation law is 3 things. If the incident involved a weapon, if the incident involved an illegal substance, so I want to say tobacco is an illegal substance for a student, right? Underage, got the marijuana, the alcohol, an illegal substance, okay? If it involved an illegal substance, or if severe harm came to somebody at the school by the hand of your child. Severe harm, in my mind, when I think of severe harm and I think of life insurance, it's like life or limb. So if it's severely harming somebody that it's changing like the trajectory of their life, like it's, you know, had that kind of effect. So it's a pretty severe injury. Okay. So, okay, so this is that manifestation meeting. They have 10 days in order to have that manifestation meeting and talk about if the manifestation, if it was a manifestation of their disability, if it was a manifestation of their disability, the team decides this, right? Not the school, the team decides. They go down the series of questions, they answer them, they decide as a team if it was a manifestation of his disability. Some of the districts will say it's a manifestation of their category, their disability category. I want to note that if the category, say, okay, for instance, the category is special learning disability. That's what the school decided on. But the diagnosis that that child has is OD, DMDD, so like oppositional defiant disorder, like all these other things, ADHD with just impulse control, you know, and that's not the category. We need to reassess with the school and pick the right category. Make sure the student is being served under the correct category. Okay. So if they say it's a manifestation, they return to their same environment. We can put a safety plan in place. We can do a threat assessment. Lots of things we can do, create plans, but they need to go back to school that next day. If they say no, then that discipline is upheld. Okay. Now, here's what I want to say. If the incident occurs again, and it's a similar incident, that's when stay in place comes involved, because we know that this is an incident we're working on through the BIP, through the behavioral intervention plan. And so that child needs to, he can leave for the day, but he needs to come back to school the next day, or he needs to stay at school and not be removed because we're already working on this plan. So we're going to have another manifestation meeting because we've already had one before. So he's already been outside that 10 days and talk about it. But in the meantime, the child is going to stay at school and continue to receive the education that we've all been working on until we have that manifestation meeting. And then if the manifestation meeting is ruled as something different, that it wasn't a manifestation, then we'll take a different turn. But I hope that makes sense. But yeah, so the IEP team needs to rework the plan, needs to do an FBA, needs to do a BIP, needs to bring in those outside providers, look at other services. If it's upheld and the student is suspended, we need to make sure we come together as a team to have a very good plan, a very good integration plan, and that we have a very good plan on how we are going to appropriately and in a free sense to properly get them educated, okay? Appropriately meet their needs through that IEP, regardless of their suspension or expulsion environment. Okay, I've gone through all that really quickly. So here's what I want to do now. Before I go to these frequently asked questions, which were kind of your burning questions that I got from the adoption team, from Sarah and them, I want us to look at, where are we at? Oh, we're at 40 minutes. Oh my goodness. Okay, I want us to look at this really quick, if I can pull it up here. Right down here is OSD's policies and procedures. And as a parent, I want you to go to this. Let's see if maybe I might have to stop this share to pull up this share. Now I've lost it here. I'm going to put this right on top of this other one and see if I can do it this way. Open. Share. And I want to share this one. Okay, so I want you to see this. Oh, sorry, you probably can't see it yet because I didn't hit share. Okay. What I want you to look at here is this is the policies and procedures. Oh, sorry. What's happening here? Policies and procedures manual, right? The State Department of Ed works every year to make sure they're updating this. And so it comes from the IDEA law, but this is in like layman's terms where we can kind of understand it, put it into practice, and it's geared towards Oklahoma, the Oklahoma state and districts. So I want you to look at chapter 10 is behavior, okay? And we're going to look at, there's multi-tiered systems of support. You know, all these, this will explain the functional behavioral assessment, that FBA, that behavior intervention plan. It talks about that behavioral threat assessment that needs to be completed, crisis plans, minimizing the use of restraints, punishments, things like that. But shortened day, the appropriate uses of shortened day, the inappropriate uses of shortened day. And in there it says if you're shortening a day because of behavior, that's not allowed. So we need to, I really want you as parents to have these resources and know where you can go and find these things. Informal removals versus formal removals. So an informal removal is like, well, they're not suspended, but we're just going to like change their environment, their educational environment, and send them homebound. But we're not suspending them or expelling them. That's an informal removal. Okay. And that is something that the state of Oklahoma, since COVID happened, it has been a big problem. And we're really trying to crack down on that and make sure we're holding districts accountable that that's not what we're doing. We're not doing these informal removals. And then those formal removals are going to be the expulsion or the suspension kind of thing, but just know the requirements. And then the requirements for FAPE is right here. And then as you go to chapter 11, that's dispute resolutions. So it's going to talk about Oklahoma CERC, which is the Special Education Resolution Center. They've got mediators, they've got facilitators, they've got attorneys. They love to, you call them and they'll answer questions, and they love to talk about cases with you and help problem solve. So very helpful. Love the CERC. It's oklahomacerc.org, and I'm going to give you the contact for that, but it talks about facilitations, mediations, state complaints, filing that, and then due process, which Oklahoma CERC can help with. Those attorneys can help with due process, but it's not something a road we want to go down. That's a federal, anyway, it's a little bugaboo. But okay, so let's go back to my presentation really. Just want to make sure I'm addressing these concerns really quick, and then I want you guys to be able to ask me questions. It's really about brainstorming, problem solving, bringing in the right outside supports. State Department of Ed has a lot of resources to outside supports. So the schools can be reaching out to the State Department of Ed for those supports, as well as you guys can. You know, the other thing that Sherry Coates says, who's the director of special education at OSDE, give us a call, ask us questions. You know, we can help find supports as well. Okay, let's see if I can, am I opening this back up? Share stop. What's this? Let's see if this happened. Okay, I'm gonna share again. Sorry, it becomes a little tedious with, okay. Oh, share. Okay, can we see this now? These frequently asked questions. Okay. Yes, can we see them? Okay, just want to make sure. I've also lost my chat box somewhere. So, okay, so the first one that I have on here is the school is calling me every day to pick up my child. Okay, we talked about that. We want to make sure that we've got the written notice of why they're helping pick up your child, that kind of thing. We want to make sure that they're not putting it on us like, oh, the parent really wanted to, you know, pick up their child. We want to really talk about how can we help? How can we support? I have work. I can't pick up my child every single day. Like, what can we do to support the school to really help you guys to work with my student so that he can come regularly? What I wrote was, okay, behavior is communication. The behavior is the child trying to get a need met. Okay, we need to remember that. Let's figure out and figure out what the need is. What is the child trying to tell us? What is the need that they're trying to meet? And if we can figure out that, then we can maybe figure out how to help that student and come up with creative ideas in order to meet that need in a different way. The need needs to be met in a very quick, responsive way. A way that they don't have to think about it. They just know that they can get that need met. And that's where behavior comes in, because they don't know how to get that need met other than what they've already been doing, which is possibly a negative behavior, right? Because that's when somebody paid attention to them. That's when they got that immediate reinforcement. That's when everything happened for them. So we've got to change that. We've got to pull back on that behavior and give them something else positive that works faster and better, okay? We can request a meeting at any time. Invite the people that know my kiddo the best so they can help with creative ideas. We need great ideas that can help support the school. We can't just rely on the school to come up with everything because they don't necessarily know our kid that well. You know, we're going to know them better. We are the experts of our own lives and of our children, right? So, get a written notice as to why they asked you to pick the child up. They can only do this up to 10 days, 10 total days, and then we're going to have that manifestation meeting. Also ask the questions, have we done an FBA? Have we done a behavioral intervention plan? You know, what are we doing in order to prevent this student from having these behavioral things to where we're sending them home? That behavioral intervention plan too, I want to say, is a living, breathing document. We can always work on it. We can always change it. We can always, is it working? Is it not working? Come together as a team and really talk about that. Even if they leave the school that day, they should be able to come back to the school the next day, brand new day, start over, refresh. That's the kind of environment they need to be stepping into. We need to make sure that we are allowing our children to find success, feel success, instead of the negatives. They can't do this, they're not doing this, you know, and it's very easy to get stuck in that because we're frustrated and working with them. But we really need to talk about the positives, the good things, and set them up for success. Give them things that are achievable. We want to make sure that we're creating goals that meet the needs, but those goals need to be, and I thought I had this in another slide presentation, need to be SMART goals, okay? SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-based, okay? If a child is kicked out of school, we need to have very specific goals. The other part of that is observable goals, something that we can visualize, that we can visually see. We can actively see the change in that child. We can talk about, and then we can come to the team and really readjust those goals. You know, if he's not, he has to meet, like say we have a child who has sexual acting out behaviors, or who was sexually abused and makes sexual comments. We're going to say to that somebody says to that child, okay, if you can stop saying those sexual comments, and this child has ID, right? IQ's below 70, processing is slow. But one of the goals is, okay, if they can stop saying sexual remarks for 4 days, then they can come back into the classroom. That's not achievable for a child with an IQ below 70, or it may not be achievable for your child who has impulse control issues. We need to make sure whatever goals we are choosing as a team are achievable, okay? But we want to make sure we're pushing that envelope on their educational goals in order to have successful outcomes. So there's SMART goals too, and that might have been in here. The school is recommending changing my students' educational environment. The team makes that decision, not the school. They need to do that threat assessment. They need to do that safety plan, because a lot of the schools will say, well, safety issue, we need to change their environment. They need to go home. They need to be home, okay? We need to talk about that. We need to do that threat assessment. We need to do a safety plan. We need to work on that. If those don't work and we really do have to send that student home and the team agrees with that, then what are the goals? Are they specific? Are they measurable? What's the time frame? When are we going to revisit this? Don't go longer than a month. We need to make sure we're writing really good goals and we're really working with that school to get that kid back in for an hour, 2 hours, half day. We do not want a student to be out of school more than a semester. Like, that's crazy. We need to be working and pushing those outcomes. Let's see. Yeah, I think once again, I said the IA team makes decisions, not the school, unilaterally come in together. We talk about it once again. Has there been an FBA? Has there been a BIP? Have we exhausted all measures, all resources? Have we done that threat assessment? Okay, that's the third one. What accommodations and services can I ask for? The sky's the limit. I love that about my job. I have a hard time staying in a box. I want to ask, ask for anything. If they say to you, we've already done that, you know what? Try it again. You never know. How many times have you tried that? We can't do that. Well, why can't you do that? So if you can't do that, could we do this? If you're constantly getting no, 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 then maybe as a parent, we should go, okay, can I come to the school and observe what's happening with my child and what the environment is so I kind of can visualize? Because maybe that I can help you come up with some other ideas then. We want to support the school. We don't want to leave them hanging that they have to figure it out. We want to support them. Maybe we could find a professional who's already working with them, who could come in and who can observe and work with that environment with that teacher. But the sky's the limit on accommodations we can ask for. No bad suggestions. Communication is behavior, so we need to really try to identify what their need is, what need they're trying to meet. We talked about this a little earlier. If they don't have the resources, they don't have the one-on-one para, they don't have the behavioral specialist, the ABA support, we need to reach out to CERC. We need to reach out to Oklahoma Parent Center, the State Department of Ed. There are avenues, there are supports, there are ABA therapists. One of the providers that I'm going to show you that I've got in a slide too is Pervasive Parenting. And that's an advocate who is in a really rural area like LaFleur County, where there's not a lot of services, but there's services and supports where you are. So reach out. Oklahoma Autism Center, they have the MESA program for children who are on the spectrum that they could come in and bring people in to support. There's grad students that need hours. They'll come in and they'll help do behavioral supports. Lots of ideas. But the school has to reach out to Oklahoma Parent Center and make that referral. What was the last one I had? I'm frustrated with the school. We cannot agree. I think my child's rights are being violated. We need to reach out to Oklahoma CERC. We need to get with the Oklahoma Parent Center. They have advocates and mentors to help support, to help you navigate that next meeting. They know what the resources are in the areas. We can reach out to the State Department of Ed. Okay, so these are the advocacy links and supports. It's that policies and procedures, the Oklahoma CERC that I talked about. These are links. You're going to have this PowerPoint. You can click on the link and it'll bring you right to it. They do facilitation and mediation. Oklahoma's Parent Center does mentors and trainings. There's Cody Tony is the one that I was talking about with Pervasive Parenting. And he helps families out of Sequoia, LaFleur, Cherokee, Haskell, Adair, and Latimer counties. And then the Oklahoma Autism Center, the health and substance abuse, they are providing therapists in each of these school districts, wraparound services. They're really trying to help support the school districts with mental health issues. Sooner Success is a great resource for a parent with a child with disabilities or anybody who has somebody with disabilities in their home. Sooner Success is really good on Oklahoma City, Enid, kind of that side of the state. And then Oklahoma Family Network is really good about helping support groups, helping families really navigate things and find resources kind of in that Tulsa area and then that kind of side of the state. Don't raise your voice, improve your argument, ask questions till you kind of get the answer you want, reword it. Refigure out, okay, maybe I need to reword this question or reword this idea. It's all about, it really does take a lot of work to advocate for your kids. But I think it has a lot to do with discovering the need, discovering the right services, discovering the right resources, and everything is not quick. It's trial and error, right? So we're going to constantly have these meetings, working to support each other, working to bring in new ideas and new providers. And your right as a team member is to, agree, disagree, and really advocate for your child and make sure they're getting what they need. So, okay. Questions. Do I have any time for questions? We got like 4 minutes. I'm so sorry.
We do have a
Let me
few
stop sharing.
questions in the chat that I'll kind of start with, just because they've kind of been in here for a little bit, so I want to make sure that we get to them. Kim asked if a child needs an academic IEP and they are in the 3rd grade, does the child find allow them to move on if they don't pass the 3rd grade reading test?
Okay, so yeah, what I would say is here's the other, okay, so there's a couple of ways that it kind of routes my mind, okay? I want to make sure that we are not retaining our children, because when they go to high school, if they are 15 and in 8th grade, so they're like 16 as freshmen, 17 as sophomores, we're jeopardizing the likelihood of them graduating. They're going to get frustrated. I'm 18, I want to be done. But they can't be done because they haven't been there to fail. So then they can't do the credit recovery. So the school should not be retaining children. The school should be providing services, creating plans, putting in a 504. If they don't have a diagnosed disability, but they're struggling, the counselor can write a 504. They can address the needs. A 504 plan is just as good as an IEP plan. As long as the needs are being met and the right services are put in place, a 504 is great. And a 504 you can put in right away. Okay, so did that answer the question? Supports. Ask for more supports. So tutoring, I mean, there's all kinds of avenues of things, and the school should be helping to provide that.
And then we've got Erica. Erica asked if a child is behind by years and the school has not suggested an IEP, what happens to the school?
So we're working on outcomes, because right now, State Department of Ed has held them to compliance. And so that is the big push, is we're working on outcomes. I don't know what happens to the school. I know that we as parents need to be requesting evaluations. And if they're not evaluating, then we need to be reaching out to CERC and doing facilitation and mediation, and reaching out to Oklahoma Parent Center and making sure that the school is evaluating. I will tell you this, they are supposed to advertise child find, okay, to those littles in the community. They don't do that. They put it in the paper. They do other things. They are very overwhelmed. And they will even have special education directors, I've heard, will say, well, we'll say, oh, well, we don't think they're going to qualify. Are you sure you want us to do that assessment? As a parent, yes, I want you to assess anyway. Even if you think they're not going to qualify, I still want you to assess. And we need to have that in writing. And when you have it in writing, then those time frames legally matter. The other thing too is on Oklahoma, on the state website, Oklahoma State Department of Education, they have a butterfly. It's a yellow butterfly with an A in it. And it says something about concerns, having concerns, have a problem, something like that. They really want parents to be clicking on that site. It's on the front page, and telling them what their educational concerns are. If it's special education, if it's not special education, they really want to investigate and evaluate and see what's happening out there. So I would encourage you guys to do that. And please don't be anonymous, because then all they have to reach out to is the school, and that's not very helpful. Okay, sorry, what was the next question?
You're good. Kathy asked, what is the school's responsibility for providing education to parents on how to get a child evaluated or how to see accommodations?
The school's responsibility in that, I don't know that there is one. They should be working together with you, doing their due diligence, everybody should be working together, have open communication in order to be doing those things. So yes, they should be helpful and informing and collaborating. But I will tell you, that is why there's Oklahoma Parent Center. That's why there's me as an advocate. There's why there's all these entities, because unfortunately parents don't know what the law is. They don't know what to advocate for. They don't know what to ask for. And they really need the support in doing that. So I would encourage, Oklahoma Parent Center has trainings on their website. They do all kinds of trainings all the time, and I would encourage you to reach out to them for support. But yeah, that's why I'm giving you, the policies and procedures manual, so that you know what your rights are, so that you can know how to advocate for yourself, and reach out to these other entities to help you advocate as well. Because it is. The world of special education is vast and it is tough to negotiate and navigate. And all the school districts are not governed by the state. They are governed by their own Board of Education. And their Board of Education takes federal law and state law and they interpret what those laws say, and they write their own policies and procedures. So the school's boss is the Board of Education, their own Board of Education, if that makes sense. So we need to understand kind of what the school's policies and procedures are too, because they're all different and there's 540 districts and they all have different policies and procedures. So, but the State Department of Ed tries to help them with developing those and give guidelines, but they're not their boss. So they're only there to help provide funding, if that makes sense.
Awesome. I think we've got one more, and if I say your
Okay.
name wrong, I'm so sorry. Yaneth asked advice for working with schools that often get upset when kiddos' rights are brought up, such as BIPs, 505s, IEPs. And I had a superintendent say that he does not want us in these meetings because it can cause issues.
Doesn't want the parents in the meetings, or maybe a service provider in the meeting. I would reach out to Oklahoma CERC and I would ask for mediation or facilitation if you're having those kind of problems. But here's the other thing that I also say to schools. Okay, here's also what I also say to schools. And as a parent, I would encourage you to say this, or a provider. We need to encourage them, right? We need to pat them on the back, beef them up a little bit. We need to, I had in my slide somewhere, and I don't know if I skipped it or not, but where my key things that I say to the school is, I know we're here, all here for this child. We all want this child to be successful. We all want the same goal. We all want to help this child. And we are so thankful for what you guys are providing. And we want to support you, and we're here for you. And we want to help you and not make you feel like you're on an island, because we have teachers who are not supported by their administrators, who don't understand IDEA and special education law, who don't understand trauma and the effects of trauma. And yet they come in and they're like, well, they're going to stay in my office and I'm going to be the one to take care of them today, when they're not trauma informed. So we need to help the schools in understanding this child, understanding the therapy modalities that we're already doing, the goals we're already working on, because those goals and therapy should be the same goals at school. We should all be working on the same things collaboratively. And so maybe having a different conversation with the school, we just really need to befriend them and get them on our side and really work well with them. I think that's what really benefits us all. And if we can't do that, then if we've got to bring in, call CERC, brainstorm with them, do a mediation, do a facilitation. If we've got to make a state complaint, we can do that too. So.
Well, I think that is all the questions that we had in the chat. So we want to just thank everyone for joining us today. In the chat, you'll find a QR code that will take you to the adoption competency page on okfosters.org. There you will find resources and links to our next events that are wrapped around supporting adoptive families. If you are needing a training certificate, go ahead and let us know and we'll email you one shortly. Also, complete the survey at the link below to provide feedback over the session. And it looks like that's already posted in there as well. We just wanted to thank you so much, Liberty. You did an amazing job, very informative, and I'm sure everyone really appreciates getting to know a little bit more about what they can do for their kiddos.
CERC is also doing a training tomorrow to tell what CERC is and the difference between their facilitations, their mediations, and then more collaboration stuff. So I would encourage you guys to be on that tomorrow. It's Wisdom Wednesday, and I think it's through the State Department of Ed. I think I sent the link to Sarah, so she could send that out to you guys too for tomorrow. And so it's a lunch and learn. So.
Okay. Awesome. Right. Thank you so much. Thank you guys, everyone.
Thank you, Liberty. You did amazing.
You're welcome. It's a lot of information. I tried to throw it all in there for you guys. So, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Megan, are you on?
I am.
When everybody hops off, can I chat with you for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was gonna call you and then I thought, I bet she's on here.
I am.